We're about to start. Okay, yeah, I can see the sign that we're live. So good evening. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much to the wonderful team of SEED and Concordia Student Union for having me today. And first, I would like to begin by acknowledging the indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationship between nations and improve our own understanding of local indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you so much. So once again, thank you for having me today. I'm hoping to have some questions from you and be able to have a dialogue. I will introduce myself. So I'm Nadia Ponce Morales. I, as you can hear from my name, I'm originally from Latin America and more precisely from Mexico. I've been here in Canada for 20 years. And a constant in my career and personal life has been a motivation to have a positive impact in society, like probably many of you do. I am working now at HEC Montreal as sustainability coordinator. But before that, I worked for 18 years in the field of international development. I also had a very brief career in the public service, 5 years. And hopefully my experience will provide you with some insights on your own reflection and your own decision to get involved in the field of international development in the way that your own context, your reality allows it. So I would like to start really the more presentation part of this conversation today. To mention very briefly some of the profound shifts that are taking place in today's society and that have an effect in the way we continue to conduct international development programs, or we actually question those. And I think that while we are really seeing a lot of changes in the field, there are many possibilities for involvement, especially for young people, and also for people who want to bring creative and more inclusive solutions in the field. Naturally, the current pandemic is forcing the international development field to question our more traditional ways of working with international partners and communities, both here in Canada and also in the Global South, and the ways also that we express our solidarity. Beyond not being able to travel or not even feeling comfortable on traveling, I think that just seeing how fragile our current economic, ecological systems are and social systems are really makes us think how we conduct international development and how we get involved. We had seen some trends before. Investment, capital flows, aid flows to developing countries has started to change a lot. And also there was a really important shift on these flows between developing countries. Before the pandemic, there were some predictions that within 20 years, the flows of investment and trades between developing countries will really be more important than the ones flowing from developed to developing countries. We also paid a lot of attention around the what we used to call the youth bulge. So the most important generation of youth that the world had witnessed, the most educated as compared to previous generation, obviously generally considered. We know that there are a lot of nuances in different parts of the world, and more connected than the present. We see how movements that can start local become international solidarity movements. I think personally that's encouraging. And that also challenges the motivations and the way that we conduct international development. Um, we know that COVID will have a huge impact on education and setbacks, especially for girls. But there is already a critical mass of educated professionals in the developing world, which really challenges some models like providing technical assistance, or really we think about how to prevent really the brain drain that has developing countries and continents have experienced in the past. And we see very interesting phenomena like witnessing countries that are net recipients of international aid and programs, but are also very generous with regards to providing assistance outside. One example that I was looking into prior to the presentation is Turkey. About 26% of the total humanitarian aid provided in the world comes from Turkey, obviously because of the size of the refugee camps in the country, but Turkey is still the main recipient of aid from the European community. So really we see more and more this coexistence between what we say really underprivileged areas in a given country, and also wealthier realities in the same country that allows this double identity of donor and recipient of international aid, and that applies to really receiving and sending experts around the world. And as a practitioner in Canada, actually, I saw a change in my almost 20 years of practice as a full-time paid staff in several organizations. When I started in 2006, there weren't many women at the senior leadership level, not a lot of women of color. The field is changing, maybe not at the speed that some of us would like to, but it's changing. And at the global level, we're also seeing interesting shifts. For instance, Oxfam International moved its headquarters to Nairobi, and there's a constant pressure from funders to actually spend most of the funds internationally, which combined with a very educated workforce where we cannot conduct international programs in the same way than it used to be in the years prior. And just to mention one last bit, but very, very important aspect of the context in international development, I'd like to mention the Me Too and the A2 movements. These movements brought into light the most horrendous phase of international activities. At the same time, it gave voice and it gave courage to some people to speak up about difficult issues of sexual abuse, sexual harassment. And it also has forced the sector to be more transparent and to revisit certain aspects that were probably not being paid attention, like, for instance, revisiting a code of ethics, having a dialogue with local partners, what does it mean internationally? And that, of course, has a very, very profound influence on how we do international development. The title of the talk today was really Saviorism versus Altruism. And I think this topic is very, very relevant. We saw recently that the lack of transparency, conflict of interest, forced the closure of an organization, We Canada, which was known, among others, by the offer of voluntarism or short-term trips for young people, a developing country. And the key message was that through these trips, they will create real change on the ground. It's obviously not the only organization that offers this kind of programs. If you look up for some for international, using general terms, you will probably get some ads from organizations offering this type of trips just to take care of elephants, or really basically tourism, and giving the message that you're making a difference through these trips. Obviously, with a little bit of analysis, you come to the conclusion that this kind of practice is primarily focused on the interest of the participants, not on any host community's interests or needs or assets, which is often problematic. But I think that I'm really describing one of the most obvious ways of conducting saviorism, this practice that reflects to a complex where a white or a privileged person provides aid to a person of color or a socially disadvantaged community. And it's really for self-serving motive. And I think that I would like to emphasize here the word privilege, which really, if we don't take into account our privilege, the power imbalances that sometimes come not from our own individual reality, or sometimes not even from the organization that is sending us. Sometimes it's really the way the funding structure is developed and designed. But really, I think that even though they are more subtle ways of doing saviorism, I will say the key aspect to avoid from falling into that trap and really conducting international development from a perspective of altruism, that is the desire to build a more equal, fair, sustainable world, is really that willingness to reflect on our privilege, understand things like the lasting impact of colonization, being humble, and really carve space for international partners, for people we meet in the communities we work, or really from anyone in what we call our host community or our partner, to express their desires for their community, really to say to us in a very honest and transparent way, this is exactly what you need, what we need, this is what we would like to do, this is how we see our community. Sometimes altruism means actually doing nothing. Sometimes it's just recognizing that a community, the best way that we can help a community is actually not conducting a project that really doesn't make sense in the context of such a community. Or maybe we sometimes come with an idea, come with experience in a community in a similar region or similar background, similar target population, and we have the humbleness to say, well, they are telling us that this is not going to work here, and it's okay. I think that's really a very concrete manifestation of altruism. Both have as in common the motivation to do good, but it's really doing good for whom and with whom. I think that's the key difference. Yes, as you can imagine, the reality is not black and white. We may have the best intentions in the world, and we may seem that we are practicing an active listening and really following the key steps for a consultation with the community, and still have elements of saviorism. We really want to have some sort of self-serving intentions. So it's always important to reflect. And I think that when you're looking up for an opportunity to do work in international development or volunteer, there are some key questions to ask yourself about an organization. It can be really for how long the organization has been around, asking the question for how long this organization works with its partners, if a community has been hosting a project, or a given region, or a given institutional partner, even though maybe the institution or the partner organization is a two-people organization on a volunteer basis. If they've been working with these people for several years, that tells you something. This is a partnership that is valued and where people have more than just an opportunistic view. Sometimes you may want to look at the annual report, if there's one, of who are the donors, who's supporting the organization, what kind of results they have had. And those might be some indications. Does the organization is transparent around its policies, around the approach that they have towards partners, what are their values? So just looking at these aspects before engaging with an organization can give you an idea. For instance, if I may just really refer to Sid, I'm very always impressed by their work. They've been around for quite a bit. They have the institutional support of Concordia. So of course, it's an organization that is really thriving and really trying to do good work. So yeah, those are some of the questions, and I have shared with some of the colleagues of SEED some references on good resources that can help you ask the right question about yourself, about your motivations and your own reflection about conducting and being involved in international development, and also the organization or the group that you want to get involved with. And maybe I can give you a couple of examples of what I've seen as examples of strong international development projects, and some that didn't go as well. And I think that throughout my years of experience, I've made mistakes, even though my motivations were good, the motivations of my colleagues were good. Sometimes we do make mistakes and we learn from them, or we try to. So I can tell you about the program that used to be offered by Canada World Youth, and it was a reciprocal program. So it was not really about short-term impact, but it was about giving young people, both in Canada and in different countries, the competencies to actually become agents of change. So you will have a group of young people working together, volunteering in a community, let's say in Honduras, and for 3 months, living with host families, and then the entire group will travel to Canada and do exactly the same. So as much as the program was not perfect, it was trying to mirror the reality to young people, helping them learn, but the same way, the people who will host these type of programs will also be in close contact with young people and really learn more about the culture. So it was really about long-term impact. And the entire organization tried to mirror. They were supervised by one Canadian staff, one staff from the partner country. So this is really one example of a program that promotes international development. If we try to tie it to one of the sustainable development goals of the United Nations, it will be hard, or it will actually speak to many. But yeah, the program as it is now, it's no longer offered. But that was really a great example of a good program. I also worked for SUCO, an organization that does a lot of sustainable agriculture projects, and they have a methodology that allows to get into that gets into a community and really asks communities how they can work together, what kind of project they want to build together. It's when I was working there, it was kind of a slow development model. So really taking the time to take into account the interest of different community members, not only the leaders, but also maybe the women who didn't have a voice, talking to young people. And yeah, they at the time I was working with them, they were an organization that stayed with partners for many, many years. And they will have programs that will be over several cycles of funding. So they could be working in the same region for several years, of course, addressing different issues. And I can see a comment from Nigel Jonathan, who says that really, I think that you bring a very important issue, that the difference between Saviorism and altruism is really enabling the communities to help themselves after a project is over. And that's key. One of the first steps that a good design program or project is actually, first of all, making sure that you take into account different realities in the community. But at the second step, or at the same time, you're thinking about how you're going to exit and how you're making sure that your contribution was strengthen the capacities that were already there. I think it's also really not flattering your ego, as you say so rightly, but it's really about how the exchange of knowledge, the exchange of competencies, the way you value what is existing in a community really becomes stronger as a result of collaboration, not pretending that you're making people learn more that you're learning, but it's really engaging in this exchange of knowledge. And yeah, one of the projects that didn't go as well was really one project that I can think of several, but one that I really reflected upon for a long time was one project that we tried to build very quickly. Sometimes international development has this reality. Donors, funders might ask you to have impact in 1 year, and it's practically impossible. You can have good results. You can make some changes in collaboration with people in the community, but having impact in 1 year is just not realistic. But that's sometimes what you feel in the form, so you can get the funds and account for it. And you can also demonstrate how you pave the way to have impact on the long term. But yeah, sometimes I can remember of one project that we needed to really implement quickly. The partner had very different priorities. For the partner, it was important to promote cultural exchange between Canada and this country, and they practically, our partner said yes to almost everything that we suggested as a project. My colleagues will go and visit the project every year. We will read the reports. They will be perfect. All the results that we wanted to show to the funder were there. When we visited towards the end of a 5-year cycle, we started talking to the community members, and we realized that most of the results were really the results of the community. We didn't need to have to be there. And our partner came from a culture where really losing face and pride is a very important value. And I can relate to that value. It's very important in the Mexican culture as well. Sometimes we'll just say, yes, we can do that, just because we're proud and we don't want to recognize that, no, this is not something that we cannot do or really doesn't make sense for you, for us. So, but we didn't have that. We didn't take the time to actually listen to the partner, recognize that there was maybe this cultural element. It was it was the culture of this partner just not to say no. And at the end of the 5 years, we knew that everything that we had told our founder was really not accurate. It was not attributable to us. So that was a big learning, and I think that's a big learning in general in the way you can conduct a partnership. In a partnership, especially in the international development field, there's always a power imbalance, especially for us here in Canada. We often have more support from government or donors. The way the fiscal system is organized in Canada, it's usually quite attractive for foundations. So yes, we have more access to funds, and sometimes we come and start working in a given community with these resources. We're accountable for this. It's us talking to the funders or the donors. So it's difficult not to recognize here that we have a power imbalance. And yes, we're trying to do good. And yes, we have some results and to account for. But at the same time, I think that one key learning is really to balance that, to acknowledge that power imbalance, and to try to lessen it with more dialogue and active listening in real consultation, and a lot of research. What has worked before well in the community? Who are the people who don't have a strong voice, who may actually benefit more from a given project than another, because there are also power imbalances in any community that we work. So yeah, and by all means, if you have any more questions or you want to make any comments about what I just said, just feel free to. But honestly, I think that if you do make the decision to get involved in international development, it's the depth of the new competencies and the skills that you will get in getting involved in the field is just amazing. If I can speak from a very personal perspective, honestly, I think that my parenting skills have improved as a result of my involvement in international development. I don't think that I will be constantly mindful of the values, that I want to transmit to my children if I hadn't had the opportunity to work in the field. As a community member, I feel more. I feel the responsibility to actually get more involved in my community. As a professional, I think that working in the international development has just helped me to adapt to any given situation, really jump across sectors, which will be really essential, especially for the new graduates. You will probably experience about 4 or 5 different transitions in your work life, if not more, just because of the speed at which we are witnessing changes in our economic system, but also climate change, unfortunately, will change a lot how the world works and all the other systems that we know. There's another question from Jonathan, and you're asking, how do we ensure that projects are sustainable, can be maintained over a longer period of time, and that they are relevant? So you asked really about sustainability and relevance, and I think that ensure is a very strong word, but we can do a lot to make sure that we put as much put favorable conditions in place. So first of all, I will say consultation, not only at the beginning of the project, but really think that a partnership or even social acceptability of a project is just a continuous process. So really keep consulting, keep talking to partners. As I said, when you're designing a new project or a new program, you really need to think about your exit strategy from the beginning, and it not meaning only that you're leaving, but also how your partner or how the community continues to go on after there is no more funding, or if it's a project where international volunteers keep part of, how we are making sure that the knowledge exchange is well documented, well shared within the community. And really, one methodology that I really love in terms of making sure that there is relevance and sustainability is really challenging the perspective of addressing the needs of a community. I think that there will always be needs in Canada, in any given country. There's always needs. If you approach it, any project or any program from a needs perspective, it will just not, there will be no end to it. But if you address it from an assets perspective, just seeing what is there in the community. Okay, we're trying to address gender equality, and are there any women leaders in the community that are already trying to do some work and just need some support? Are there any men in the community that would really like to get more involved, but there are social norms that are just preventing that? How we can address those issues? So I think that's key, really, to observe, to really make sure that we build upon those assets in the community, and those people who are already engaged and really much more knowledgeable than we are about their own aspirations, interests, and capacities. I honestly believe that that's one good methodology to approach international development. And yeah, I think that that can bring a diversity of voices to the table. And talking about diversity, I think that there's really a wide array of ways of getting involved. A lot of organizations now are struggling, but for some moment, we thought that one solution was really to maybe think about revenue generation activities. Right now, with the hardship that COVID has brought into the economy, organizations have less resources to work with. So working, like volunteering here in terms of philanthropy, organizing fundraising activities can be a great way to help while you're here. Yeah, Chris just asked a question about how is possible to become independent from external donation when we are working in international development, and how realistic it is actually to have funds from the private sector. And I think I have mixed feelings about that. While we hear internationally that and we're seeing actually there will be a reduction of aid, official aid from the government flowing to developing countries, just because the economy is stretching. No country will grow at the rates they were expecting because of COVID, among others, but also eventually because of our dependency on fossil fuels. And we're saying, well, maybe the private sector can pitch in. The thing is that the private sector that we have right now works still under the assumption that the main objective is actually to increase profitability from a strict economic term. And few companies have started to follow the movement of actually integrating social or environmental impact into the core of their activities, which will really make a difference. But I'm quite optimistic, actually. I think that in the short term is not realistic, just because the way most of the economy is organized. I think that in the medium term, there's some movement of corporations changing, and I think that it won't be only donations to projects like it used to be, or even the kind of model that we had under the conservative government, where we will say, okay, if you're an international development organization, you need to work with a mining company or a company from the sector that is actually just it's actually promoting the economic interests of Canada. I don't think that we will go back to that model, but and I think that more corporations will be working from a more authentic and transparent way. But I do think that financial sustainability is an aspect that you need to build within your project, either revenue generating activities. One of the last programs that I've designed as a full-time paid employee was around youth entrepreneurship. So really saying, instead of waiting for a company or a private sector member to invest, become the private sector and just promote this entrepreneurship that integrates social and environmental values. I think that's one of the realistic ways to do it, really. Yeah, Michelle Savard is also asking about an interesting question about unconscious bias that translates into actions of a superiority attitude. And yeah, in that respect, as you rightly said, Michelle, it's pre-departure training that can really make a difference in terms of encourage reflection, either start a reflection process or actually flip upside down your reflection process. We all have unconscious bias. Our minds needs shortcuts just to analyze all the information that we get from outside. And yes, everybody has it as a and I think that's key. And that's one element that I didn't mention before, but when you're actually looking for an international development opportunity, the quality, the format of a pre-departure organization tells you a lot about how much attention is paid to actually making sure that the people that go abroad or to get involved in an organization at least have that analysis and know that, are aware that we all have unconscious biases and prejudices, but that we also have the ability to rationalize them and just to act differently of what our biases will tell us to do. There's another question which is really interesting about institutions of higher education integrating sustainability in their curriculum. And actually, that's you just guessed what's one of the areas that I'm really more passionate and committed about in my work as a sustainability professional in the academic sector. I think that we can do as many projects in the campus as we do as extracurricular, and we'll reach a given part of the population of students. Like today, I'm sure like not everybody stays at 7 p.m. listening to a person about her experience. Like you're the people that are already have started a reflection, but a lot of students might just not have a lot of time. They might just go to class, have to work full time because they have to rely on themselves. Their families might be relying on them to contribute. We know that with housing costs and the realities of our economy, some young people just don't have the time to volunteer. or to participate in any extracurricular activities. But if we integrate sustainability in courses that are not focused on sustainability, it can create more awareness, and it can just provide students with so many competencies like systemic analysis, really looking at things from different perspective. And I think that's key. With all the daunting effects of climate change, we need to develop that kind of ability to integrate sustainability no matter what field we're in. So definitively, yes, we should continue to integrate sustainability in the arts. If we're doing a PhD in philosophy, in literature, we should at least have some exposure to sustainability and hopefully to social justice as well. We often tend to treat them as separate topics, whereas they are completely linked. We need an anti-racism analysis when we speak about sustainability and obviously international development. So yeah, thank you for your question, Jonathan. I think your last name is Nigel, but so sorry if I'm just saying your name all wrong. So yeah, and ways to get involved. I actually I was talking about maybe helping here with fundraising. Obviously, I'm sure that some of you have heard the advice of trying to get involved here in your community in Canada. Right now, we're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, so it's really having an impact both here in Canada and also internationally. We're also going to share the links. At HSM Montreal, we produced a career guide on sustainable development, and there's a whole section on international development. So you can find there a list of reputable organizations that offer internships or international volunteer experiences that eventually will resume. It's good to start with sometimes the student programs. A lot of reputable organizations will offer internships that are part of a larger project. So yeah, maybe you go there for 6 months and you might have limited experience or only your studies, what you have learned in class. But if you're part of a project, like the organization or the partner organization will have thought about ways you can contribute according to your level of experience or skills. So that's another way to get involved. It's also, I think, one of the ways to get involved is also learning, reading, trying to organize conversations around the community about international issues. It's a topic that unfortunately is far from a lot of people's reality, but it's good to generate this sense of empathy and solidarity in different ways that we can. And thank you for confirming, Nigel, that your name is Nigel Jonathan. So nice to meet you, and nice to meet you all. So yeah, that's some ways to get involved in international development. If you have more questions, we still have almost 15 minutes, so feel free to send any questions or comments. But yeah, it's really great to be able to speak a little bit about a field that really is close to my heart. Some of you may ask the question, if it's so great, why you left? And I think it answers to some of the elements that I was mentioning at the beginning of the talk, which is really, in my opinion, the sector might not be changing at the speed that I needed it to change. I'm hopeful that changes will be coming, but as a single mom, it was just very, very difficult to be able to continue to be involved, and the expectation that you have to travel and be really spend a lot of time overseas just didn't really resonate with my family reality. And Eagle, you're asking a very good question about the experience of the people of color in the field of sustainability. Seeing as the people in this field are supposed to be more enlightened. Sorry, I think there's. I was really looking at statistics and facts on how people of color are represented in sustainability, and I think that when you look at from a global perspective, and a lot of the statistics that I was seeing were really in the US and talking a lot about scholars, and we see an underrepresentation of people of color. And I can tell you about my experience as a woman of color working in sustainability, and I think that sometimes it helps a lot. Maybe I'm not seeing as more enlightenment, but sometimes people just see people of color like me as someone who might actually understand more some of the realities and some of the issues that they are experiencing. One of my first experiences internationally was when I was very young, and I was traveling with a group of white men, and I was part of an official delegation or an official program, and being the only young woman of color, I was obviously considered as maybe the translator, the secretary. I could not be seen as one of the experts. Part of the problem was solved with age and a few white hair, but really, when I was working, for instance, in Latin America, of course, people will say, well, you understand some of the issues that we're seeing in our communities, you understand what some of the problems are. When I was working with African partners, they will say, well, you're not African, but and every African country has its own differences, even within the country. But as a person who comes from the South, you might understand some of our realities and really seeing how, yes, taking care of the environment is challenging, how colonialism has influenced a lot some of the practices that we have. And in general, people may see you as really more understanding of the reality, which can also be a challenge because I'm not a Latin American expert. I know very well my country, Mexico. I've worked with a lot of partners in Latin America, but that doesn't make me an expert. Every region is so different. So, and yeah, there's also the risk of tokenism, as you say so rightly, Miguel. Being a young African person of color, unfortunately, there might be times where you're the only young African person of color in the room, and people, sometimes organizations or people will just check the box. But fortunately, that's happening less and less. I will say that in the international development field, we're seeing some change. And more and more, there's a conscious effort of actually trying to find more people, more role models, more mentors. And I think that's one way of us people who are with a little bit more of experience or years in our background to get involved into mentorship programs. Maybe I'm not working in the same organization that you are at the moment, but you know that you can reach out to me and tell me, I'm experiencing this issue. I'm the only person of color in the room. Here's what I'm experiencing. And by saying maybe you know a person who can actually do that for you. So try to think about who can actually be there for you, and also I'm sure that you can bring a lot to the table as well. And yeah, I think that we cannot deny that there's still more barriers for people of color than are for people who are white. But it's just seeing the profound effect that the Black Lives Matters movement will have in the international, but also in all fields. And the real questioning that is happening in some organizations that I would have never thought that will move forward. I think that that leaves me cautiously optimistic. And yeah, hopefully tokenism and discrimination and exclusion become part of the past at some point. So we still have a few minutes left, and yeah, I just want to invite you to continue the conversation. I am sure there will be other talks organized by SEED. Also, the great people of SEED and the CSU have my contact number and information. Feel free to reach out through LinkedIn or just to continue the conversation or ask me any more specific question. And as I said, I have shared a few resources. There's this very good book by a professor that is now with University of Ottawa, Rebecca Thiessen. She wrote a book really to help us reflect on our experience in international development before we depart, during, and after. And there's a website that really summarizes that experience, that book, and helps us reflect on that experience. As I mentioned, I'm also sharing the sustainability career guide that we produce. It's in French, but it has a lot of information and up-to-date links. Yeah, I think I when I was getting ready and just checking my facts and statistics to tell you what I shared during the context, I was really surprised by the amount of analysis that is out there. So I'm just seeing more and more reflection on really reflecting on how we can do better in international development. And yeah, shout out to SEED and the CSU. Really glad. And thank you so much for your attention. And we still have a few minutes if you want to write more questions or comments. And yeah, by all means, if you have any feedback, any elements, I'm always open for comments and suggestions. Thank you so much, Chris. And I just see that I missed a question. I'm so sorry, Michelle. You asked a question, and we have still a few minutes. So you're asking if people maybe just want to hear so much about international issues, and yeah, sometimes obviously my close group of friends have similar interests than me, so it's easy. But when I go outside of my close circle of friends, sometimes I feel that in addition to my accent, I'm speaking a different language when I talk about international issues and realities. But I think one way to engage people is really from the beginning relate to our own reality here in Canada. When I talk about poverty, just saying, I live here in the Saint Michel neighborhood, and it's a very diverse neighborhood. You have huge houses, but you also have people who have difficulty finding housing or providing 3 meals a day for their families. So when I say, international development is just expressing solidarity with people who are beyond our borders, but who might be experiencing the same issues that we're here that we're living here in Canada. And sometimes often the answer will be like, well, why don't we then focus the efforts here in Canada? And I often say, we need both. I think that if we, as a big global community, we lift up our neighbors, we'll just do better. If the general situation in this planet is that we're all better off, it's just good for everybody. So I often try to do that to really relate to what is going on here in Canada. Oftentimes when I share statistics about gender inequality, gender violence, it's amazing how people are still surprised that here in Canada we experience a very similar situation than other countries. We don't imagine that women experience some issues that are unfortunately very similar to what we see overseas. And Nigel, you're asking the future is for sustainability. My hope is that at some point the field will become irrelevant, just because like we're seeing biodiversity loss, climate change issues are just having such an effect in our lives that we'll have to integrate it within the rest of our concerns. At some point, sustainability will be just something that I'm hoping that at some point I will become useless and have to change career again. So yeah, and Rafael, you have welcome to HEC Montreal. You have ideas of projects to empower international communities. So yeah, drop me a line. I would really like to hear more about it. For students in Concordia, no, I know that there was the sustainability fund that was available, and I don't know the functioning, but we have a similar fund at HEC Montreal for students in HEC who might be listening. So if you have an idea of a project, we have funding and to help you implement. And I know that Concordia was one of the first organizations in implementing, the first, I think, in Canada to implement a sustainability fund. So yes, just as a last word, know the resources that are in your university. It's really important. You'll be surprised of how much support you will find in the institutions to engage and really become a social entrepreneur and start acting upon the issues that matter to you. So thank you so much. I honestly don't mind staying for a little bit longer, but I know it's 8 and I might be speaking to a younger crowd than I am. Maybe you're planning to do something. Okay, CSU tells me to go ahead. So if you have more questions, I'm really available and all excited to hear about your comments and questions. So yeah, Rafael, if you want to get mentorship funding, just reach out. We have the HEC, c'est les Fonds de Développement Durable, HEC. And I know that Concordia supports a lot initiatives from the students. Okay, so we can stay for a little bit more, 15 minutes max. So if you have any more burning questions, go ahead. If not, by all means, feel free to reach out to me through LinkedIn. If you Google me, you'll find very quickly my contact information at HEC, which is really the email and phone number that I use the most. Okay, thank you. So I don't see any more comments or questions popping up. Thank you so much for interacting. I know it's not easy to interact through online. Hopefully the situation will eventually allow us to have a good conversation over coffee or tea in person. In the meantime, Take care, and yeah, stay tuned with CSU for future sessions. Thank you.